we're here to discuss a 9th level spell. And of course, everybody out there has a little bit of an opinion about what the rules don't say about certain things. And well, it's really up to the DM to decide a lot of those gray areas if we haven't been given such gracious sage advice from the one and only Jeremy Crawford or Chris Perkins. I don't know if you're familiar with the sage advice you can find on Twitter of all places, but it's archived on other websites. But it's basically just rulings that they have tried to clarify on, and some of them have even eventually made their way to updated versions of the D&D 5e rules. But before we continue and get into the meat and potatoes of the video, while you're really here, what the title is all about, the true polymorph spell, if you take a moment to hit the like button, that'd be awesome. Help support the channel for absolutely free, and that would be much appreciated. And by the time this is over, if you feel like this is the kind of stuff you're into, well, you can subscribe for free as well, and then you'll be updated next time some videos come out. I'll just pop up in your feed one day and it'll be like, oh, that guy. So, true polymorph. There's some interesting things about this spell. Let's go ahead and just take a look at what the spell actually says, right? True polymorph. It says, choose a creature or a non-magical object that you can see within range. You transform the creature into a different creature, the creature into a non-magical object, or an object into a creature. And the object must be neither worn nor carried by another creature. You'll see that little phrase come up a lot in spells. The transformation lasts for the entire duration, or until the target drops to 0 hit points or dies. Very cute words there. If you concentrate on this spell for the full duration, however, the transformation lasts until it is dispelled. And of course by that it would be through dispelled magic or anti-magic field, something like that. This spell has no effect on a shape changer or a creature with 0 hit points. An unwilling creature can make a wisdom saving throw, and if it succeeds, it isn't affected by this spell. And then the spell's effects are listed. Oh boy. Before we go into details about the 3 different types of true polymorphing you might do here, which is creature into creature, object into creature, or creature into object, there's some vagueness here that you'll see throughout the description of the spell. And I'm here to present my ruling that I would give at a table. There's other folks out there that are going to have to make these rulings up for themselves, of course. You're going to have to fill in the gray areas for yourselves as the DM. As players, of course, you can make suggestions and even cases and arguments for why things could be ruled a certain way, but ultimately you have to accept whatever the DMs are, ruling. And if you enjoy this kind of brain teasers and working out this cryptic stuff, then you might find yourself in a really good position to run a game or two, because that's the kind of things that DMs have to deal with a lot. If that's the thing you enjoy, then give DMing a try if you haven't yet. I think everybody has the capabilities of doing so. It's all about if you enjoy it or not. So, but how would you know if you have not yet tried? Anyway, that's not what this video is about. But we're going to go through, break down some questions that I have here prepared there's a website that I found. It had an interesting conversation about the spell, so I've got some of their questions here. I've also got some questions that a player of mine has asked me from my favorite campaign, which, for context, the party's at level 19 right now. We just did session 135 earlier this week. It was pretty cool. And I would like to definitely post a recap video of the adventures leading up until now at some point. So that might be what is coming out next on the channel. I'm not sure, but go ahead and comment down below what type of video you want me to do next. whatever, gets the most traction or whatever seems like the best idea, or maybe just whatever I feel like, then that will be the next video. So I appreciate the feedback. They're pretty much the main reason why this video got made in the first place, and I just wanted to leave it here so that the rest of my group can watch the video if they ever want to cast this spell. Just other DMs out there might want to know about, hey, how would you rule True Polymorph? And so maybe this will actually help you at your table. But either way, let's get into the first question. This spell sort of makes it unclear as to what happens when you revert back to your original form. So, for one example, has time passed for your body, your original body, since in the other form that you were in? Another question that's paired along with it is, has your original stat block gained the benefits of any rests you may have had in the interim? So, if I go into True Polymorph, into another form, and then my new form takes a long rest, and is my original form going to get the benefits of said long rest? So here's my thing, all right? And I'm going to use text from the spell itself to sort of justify this answer and a few of the others, kind of give you a basis of where I'm thinking. The spell says, when the creature reverts to its normal form, the creature returns to the number of hit points it had before it transformed. To me, that sounds like a pretty hard rule, and it has some other implications as well. In my mind, it's sort of implying the creature's normal form is placed into this stasis-like state of being. Thinking about it on the extreme end of things, right? They don't age, they don't benefit or suffer from anything that happens while in the new form, because their old form is suspended in animation, basically, And that kind of concept isn't really new to a lot of people dabbling in fantasy. I'm going to assume if you're dabbling in a 9th level spell, you're probably pretty fantastical. That's sort of my idea. Now, I would have sort of an exception to this rule, and it's hinted at with that death clause that we looked at earlier. So why don't we get to death in True Polymorph, alright? The third question I have is, what happens if I turn someone into something with a naturally very short lifespan, like a housefly? Around a month later, it's going to die, but not for having 0 hit points. Just because it doesn't have a very long lifespan. Do they remain dead? That's the question. Do they remain dead? What happens? Let me quote the spell once again to kind of preface my answer with this. The spell lasts for the duration, or until the target drops to 0 hit points, or dies. Later on in the spell it says, if it reverts as a result of dropping to 0 hit points, any excess damage carries over to its normal form. You see where I'm going with this? It says, as long as the excess damage doesn't reduce the creature's normal form to 0 hit points, it isn't knocked unconscious. Alright, what's the inverse of that? Well, if it is knocked to 0 hit points, the excess damage, it transfers over and knocks the original form to 0 hit points. Well, they're unconscious. It's just regular rules as written would be for your creature, or for yourself. Well, I say yourself, of course you could be casting this on enemies too, but whether it's an enemy or yourself, it seems to imply that damage carries over, like just raw damage. Doesn't say anything about conditions or anything like that, but damage does. And so, look, that to me implies that a death blow is a death blow, and even implies that that the unconscious condition carries over. Are other conditions going to carry over? Of course, I'm going to leave that up to you. Personally, I think it's just going to be raw damage that's going to carry over from the original form, from the new form back to the original form when it reverts. But other than that, I don't think it would. I think your original form is just in a stasis condition, but somehow damage is going to go through. Fourth question. What does any kind you choose mean when it refers to, the creatures that you can turn into? Does that mean any printed creature? Does that include NPCs with levels? Does it mean you can make up creatures from whole cloth, and as long as the calculated CR is less than that of your target, you can turn someone into a Werdrakopire Lich? Look, I tried to read whatever that as best as I could, but you get the point, right? And I like that idea. Trust me, I do. But at some point, this fictional idea that you have in your head has to meet reality. There has to be some kind of practical manifestation out there. Okay, so let's look at the spell, what it says first, and then continue from there. It says the new form can be any kind you choose, whose challenge rating, and then it goes on to say some other things. The next clause, so it implies it's looking at the new form's challenge rating. That's what it's looking at when it says looking at what you can turn into, right? All right. And then it says the target's game statistics, including mental ability scores, are replaced by the statistics of the new form. It's calling for statistics. It's calling for a stat block. Later on in the section discussing turning an object into a creature, it states, the GM has the creature's statistics and resolves all of its actions and movement. To me, this implies that 1, the new form must have a stat block. Okay? Let's just face it. It's got to have a stat block. Everything in the spell is trying to look at statistics. As in, it can't be something completely new to 5th edition. And I'm sorry. Maybe you can work with your DM beforehand and come up with a stat block, like work with them to come up with one. There's a lot of cool DMs out there that will actually consider homebrew. So it's always a thought. But at the end of the day, we need something to bring into the game when it happens. This seems to imply to me, looking at CR, is that the new form can't have levels, only a CR. Maybe your DM will allow your character to turn into another character. And the logistics of that is, however you want to work it out, that's great. But practically speaking, it's pretty much impossible for me to give a player another player's character sheet real quick and then enable them to edit it in real time. And oh man, honestly, you're better off just saying no levels. You only copy something that has CR, okay? The justification first is that the DM can't be expected to calculate every PC's CR either. Otherwise, you could make some kind of separate stat block. Although it would be kind of interesting having like an NPC version of a stat block for your characters. And that way, if they do a true polymorph thing, you have that thing ready, right? That'd be interesting. I'm not going to do that for this campaign. I might do that for a future campaign, but for this one, yeah. And you could ask other DMs out there, that might be a little too much work for them. So don't necessarily expect them to do that for you. But to me, that's how you would kind of get around that whole no levels thing, is you have the DM make an NPC style stat block. But they also can't be expected to create a new stat block on the spot for whatever the caster can imagine. If they don't have the stats for it, then they can't give you anything. You know what I'm saying? That's putting a lot of stuff that they need to do on the spot and come up with, and yeah. You're better off sticking to a stat block. One that's in 5e already. Otherwise, it would be kind of more abusive. It would have a little bit more abusive potential than Wish. And that's debatable, of course, but you get what I'm saying. Building on that logic, the new form can't be anything quote-unquote unique, a la named creatures such as Zariel or Elminster. Because, those things have levels, or, there's this idea where maybe you wouldn't know all of that unique creature's potential abilities and stuff like that. It would be an interesting way to steal information about an enemy, is like you're in battle with them and like you just true polymorph into them and now you know everything that they can do. Oh, but yeah, I don't know about that. That seems kind of a little OP in my personal opinion. If you leave the named creatures and unique creatures off the table, then again that kind of corrals the choices into a much more reasonable pick. I personally wouldn't allow legendary resistances, legendary actions, layer actions, although it could be debated. I would definitely at least leave layer actions off the table because those feel like, you have to be attuned to the region and all the other good stuff. And of course, that's not to say that, in the same vein, I suppose regional effects wouldn't be allowed either. But legendary actions and legendary resistances, those are probably have a little bit more of a leeway. So your DM might allow you to use legendary actions and resistances of, say, the adult silver dragon that you turn into, or would it be a young silver? Either way, because we're talking about my level 19 player, they can choose up to a CR 19 creature to turn into, and there's a lot of creatures that are not named that still have legendary actions and resistances. I'm not necessarily on a hard limit with that in particular. I might limit legendary resistances, or limit them both and say that, hey, instead of 3 of each, you have 1 of each. And then maybe after the hour passes and they are like locked into their new form to a certain extent, then it's like, okay, well now you get all 3 legendary actions and resistances because, now you're stuck as an adult dragon and good luck going into town, or I don't know. There's ways around everything, of course, at the end of the day. So you got to always keep that in mind. Basically, you could say they could cast contingency on themselves or a trinket and be like, whenever I think the word unmorph, it dispels the true polymorph and I revert back to my original form. They could set up a contingency like that. And there's other ways to get dispelled as well and go back to the normal form. Ultimately, you'll have to consider the legendary actions and resistances things. But again, I'm going to go ahead and stand on the fact that layer actions and regional actions wouldn't be a thing under True Polymorph. And just to wrap that topic up, I would end up basing it off of like how familiar they are with the form. So of course, the concentrating for the hour and letting it stick, that would make them more familiar. If they're a student of that type of species, maybe that would make them more familiar. If they were already a creature of the same species, so like let's say a dragonborn turns into a dragon, maybe that helps their case. So I would just kind of adjust it according to that sort of thing. Maybe give them 1 legendary action and legendary resistance at the beginning of the spell, or none at all, and just have them gain the use of all 3 eventually. That's kind of where I'm leaning towards on that thing. But now we're getting into the last couple questions, and if you made it this far in the video, holy shit, you're a champ. I appreciate you. Yeah, again, if you want to see more videos like this in the future, then definitely subscribe, definitely hit the bell, and then they'll even notify you, they'll send you a push notification to be like, hey, this guy, he posted a video. One of the original questions that this was brought up upon was, if I turn an object into a creature, does that creature now have a soul or a spirit? What's its personality like? Well, I'm going to go ahead and say, looking at a normal PC's character sheet, you find a spot for personality trait, bond, flaw. Essentially what you would only have in this new object that became a creature, it's going to have a personality trait and it's going to have a flaw. But that's it. It's not going to have, goals, right. So it's not going to have any goals. It's not going to have any bonds because it's a new life. You could approach this in multiple ways. You could say that its personality is akin to whatever the typical alignment would be of that creature. So if you turned the object into a young red dragon, it's going to be, have the personality or temperament of a young red dragon. Even if it was transformed into that thing from just a boulder, Because, you know, hey, what if I turned a boulder into a cat? Would it have the personality of a boulder or a cat? You know what I'm saying? So I think it's up to the mage themselves. The spellcaster, whenever they focus their intentions into their new creation, it should be up to them. They can come up with their personality traits of the new creature and the flaw too, because it should have a flaw. It shouldn't be just personality traits. There should be at least one flaw just to make things interesting, you know. But it's not going to have any goals, and it's not going to have a soul or a spirit either, because that would start implying a lot of things. If a mage, albeit a very powerful one, casting 9th level spells is no joke. That puts you in the top 0.01% probably of spellcasters in the Forgotten Realms, for example. Still wouldn't be able to make a soul or a spirit. That's maybe some other spell out there, or a topic for another video, maybe. Who knows? And the last question would be, can I, as a true polymorph adult silver dragon, conceive, egg, or make babies with another real dragon? Of course. You're going to get that question, I promise you. Everybody who runs the campaign, all your players are going to ask that exact question. Yep. You did the thing. Good job. Alright, well, anyways, thanks for checking out the video on True Polymorph, the 9th level transmutation spell. Again, if you liked what you saw, please leave a like. Comment down below as to what the next video topic I should cover is. Should it be another 9th level spell with vague wording? Should it be the recap of my campaign? Or should it be some other random stuff I might have cooking behind the scenes? Who knows? Either way, I appreciate you. Much love. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Wait a second, this isn't Minecraft. Oh my god, I'm embarrassed.